Hello and welcome to Overvolted. Today we're joined by Matt.
Hello.
And I'm your host, Kirk. We are pretty much just going to two-man it for this one. Jim was unable to attend for this one because, well, he's busy, but
I'm busy doing what? I can't imagine.
Probably enjoying the good life with his girlfriend and all the other stuff that a lot of us do in our day-to-day to keep us entertained.
Like playing games where we kill other people.
I like FPS, but I prefer racing games personally.
Oh, I was talking about like Hitman. Where at the point like you're literally assassinating people.
There you go. Actually, Hitman wouldn't be too bad. Did that game come out already, or are they still
Hitman
working
3?
on it?
I don't think so. I just bought Hitman 2. I bought Hitman 2 after I thought I already bought it because the Steam page for Hitman is a freaking mess.
Yeah.
If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
Of course.
Anyways,
I figured the game itself hadn't come out yet. I think it's in delay after delay, just like every other game we know of. Like
I don't think I've heard of a delay. I thought it was announced recently, wasn't it? Wasn't it recently?
I don't know. I only pay attention to games when the actual announcement for their release date is firm and within a few weeks.
Yeah, same.
Other than that, it could just get delayed at the last minute. We're still working on it. I mean, I like the whole polishing the game just before it launches idea, making sure that it's actually good on day one rather than this whole update after update for weeks.
Kirk, and I hate to break it to you, buddy. Those are bygone days.
No, the bygone days are the days where they release the game and it's done. Those are the bygone days, like when you could go and buy a cartridge for your Nintendo and that's it. There's no updates, no nothing. Those games had to be flawless.
Well, you can still buy a cartridge for your Nintendo and it'll still get updated.
You can now because everything is internet connected. I mean, that's kind of the benefit of the modern era versus the bygone era is, well, the games were simpler back then, yes, but there was only so many paths that those games would take. And so there were very few things that needed to actually be validated as compared to current games.
But also Nintendo is still using cartridges.
Yeah. For
their flagship console, which is fine.
Well, we still use USB drives.
I mean, yeah, but those are good. How the hell are you going to make that smaller?
I know, right?
Okay, do we want to just start on our first topic?
Sure. Let's go ahead and jump to the exclusive that we had in Jim's video over the past week here.
So, Jim recently got a pretty good-sized amount of info about Zen 3. This is mostly about Milan, though, but it will apply to stuff like Vermeer to an extent, which is the desktop Ryzen 4000 for Zen 3. And we're pretty firm on this. We don't think much of this is going to change. The headlines here are L3 cache size confirmed. It's going to be the same as Rome. Unified CCX, we already knew that. AMD leaked that themselves. But we have IPC increases. Our 10 to 15% is still basically the same. But that's if you calculate it the same way AMD did for Zen 2. The main difference between Zen 2 and Zen 3 is that Zen 3 is a large integer IPC bump. The floating point is not nearly as high of a bump. It's like probably sub 10%, maybe even like 5%. The integer IPC is over 15%, I believe. I believe that's what I said. Yes, over 15%. But the single-threaded integer gain is over 20% because you have to consider the clock speed gain, and as well as probably changes to the boosting algorithm. We don't know for sure how exactly you get the 20% higher with the more than 50% integer IPC gain, but we're guessing that it's probably down to clock speed because you can see that it drops down to only a 10 to 15% lead when you're comparing 64 to 64 cores. So we're hitting some kind of limit here. It's either clock speed or memory or something along those lines. But I think it's clock speed.
I would think it's clock speed as well. And this is the same process or very similar to it that we currently have in Rome. So the only thing they're going to do is probably have a little bit of extra clock speed like they did on the XT series CPUs they just launched, where they just have that slight bump, and that's about it. We don't expect any revolutionary architecture changes or anything like that until Genoa comes out.
Which is Zen 4. So there's a lot, well, not a lot, but I say a decent amount of confusion about what we were saying. And what we say is what we mean. When we say 20% over 20% faster in single-threaded integer performance, we're talking about a workload that is primary integer focused, and that's just the performance, Milan versus Rome. That's everything. That's the IPC, that's your clock speed, that's anything else that could matter, like RAM, capacity, and speed. Though I don't think capacity is going to be that big of a deal in single thread. When we talk about IPC, we do mean IPC. And if you don't know, instructions per clock, that is a workload dependent thing, because obviously some workloads are going to use different instructions than others. Another thing is that a lot of people were surprised that the floating point increase is so low. But you have to remember that Rome versus Naples is a theoretical 4 times gain in floating point. It's 4 times because you have double the cores and double the floating point unit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they doubled up on the FPU. So that's a 4 times gain that they just had. So of course they're not going to do a 50% gain, which was the rumor previously. And that's also largely down to the fact that we're still on 7 nanometer.
Yeah, the rumor was probably due to some of the misinterpreting of previous information. So, yeah, we're not going to see a 50% gain in FP. And we might see it with Genoa because they're going to have to support AVX 512 at some point. And I'm thinking they're going to target Genoa for that.
We had a previous leak that said AVX 512 for Zen 4.
Yeah.
But even outside of that, even outside the instruction, they're probably going to add some more floating point units or increase the width of the ones that already exist there or do something else.
Yeah, and it's probably increase the width so the AVX 512 will be supported.
There was also the matter of the production and the release, where we said that the B0 is going to be the final stepping and that's going to be produced in September.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, well, that sounds really close to the launch date, which is supposed to be in 2020, perhaps December 2020. And we agree, yeah, that is going to be pretty close. It's probably going to be a paper launch, or it might only be Milan, something like that.
Well, here's the thing about server launches. They can launch the CPU, and we in the industry might not even be able to purchase said server for 3-4 months afterward. Like with the release of Rome, they had that thing paper launched in July, and I could place an order for one of these servers that were supposed to be ready to go, right? And I could get that order placed, but I wouldn't see it on my desk until late August or early September.
Yeah, so when AMD says Zen 3 in 2020, they have a lot of leeway. Like, they haven't even specified what Zen 3 product they're even talking about. And if it's only Milan, then they have that much leeway. They wouldn't have as much leeway if they were saying Zen 3 desktop, because we can tell when that's a paper launch.
Yeah, because obviously we can buy those directly, and server CPUs not so much.
Yeah, that's a little bit more complicated. But we also know that production is definitely delayed to September, because you can see in this AMD EPYC 7000 series roadmap, which was leaked by AMD on YouTube in I don't know when this was, late 2019. Jim did a video on it. I can't remember which one it was. But they leaked this presentation that showed this roadmap, and you can see the Milan sticker or graphic or whatever, and you can see the very end of it says production, and production is squarely in the middle of Q3. But we have an updated version of this roadmap with a little bit more on it, and one of the things that's changed with this is actually that the Milan graphic has been moved to the right so that the production thing appears at the very end of Q3, which is going to be September. the Rome thing has not been changed, Naples has not been changed, but Milan has, which is telling us that, well, production has been delayed to September, just like our source, well, just like Jim's source said. So it would, I mean, this is pretty cut and dry. I mean, at this point, we expect like a paper launch.
Yeah, we have a pretty high confidence level about a lot of this.
Like, we have slides too. We can't show them, unfortunately, including this updated roadmap. But I mean, it's legit. So
yeah, we can't even tell you everything that's on said slide.
Yeah, and there's some stuff that we can tell you that we'll tell you later. So
yeah, we will be divulging some of this at a later date once it becomes more.
I mean, Jim's probably working on a video.
Yeah, true.
For the next thing.
True. We have been having discussions about dissecting what we've seen. So.
Yep. And then, and then Jim had a follow-up article that he wrote behind my back. Didn't even ask me. I fear for my job security. Anyways, so Jim actually, he got a lot of pushback against the little floating point gain, and then he actually got word about this Anvil supercomputer where they gave the node count, they gave how many CPUs they have per node, how many cores, and the peak performance in flops. So basically, we have a 2.6. Oh well, the 2.6 is theoretical, but we have everything but the clock speed here. Basically, we have the node, we have the CPU core count per CPU. We have how many CPUs per node, and we have the nodes, and then we have the final floating point performance. All we're missing is how many flops these CPU cores can do and what clock speed they're running at. If you assumed that there was a 50% increase in floating point performance, then these CPUs would have to be running at a very low clock speed. Jim didn't even actually calculate that because he didn't entertain it. But you would have to be running at like the mid 1.5 gigahertz, something like that. Or there is very little floating point increase, and you're running at a clock speed similar to Rome or even higher, and that would be like around 2.6. And if you do that, you get 5.3. So which one sounds more likely?
Obviously, the higher clock speed.
Yeah, obviously the higher clock speed and the lower floating point. So, and Jim said confirmed, and a lot of people were mad about that. But come on, it's confirmed. There's no way. There's no way there's going to be a floating point. And you have to consider...
Well, we've seen it from two different sources now, one of which is this whole node thing where you have to do a little bit of math to kind of figure it out. But, I mean,
it's not like we were told that there was a little floating point increase. It's just that we don't have that indication. If they're going to talk about a sizable integer bump, they're going to talk about a floating point increase of 50%.
Especially if the floating point was a 50% gain.
Yeah.
I mean,
why we would know about it.
Yeah.
If we know about the integer stuff.
They practically had it on every slide when they doubled the FPU. So
you have to consider, how are they putting this FPU in? How much die space is it going to consume? How much more energy is it going to consume? Is it going to bring the clock speeds down? This, that, and the other. And it's like, when you just think about it, you don't even need sources to figure out that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I don't know. It's in you're bringing the clock speed down and whatnot. Sounds kind of like Intel's AVX instructions.
Yeah. Well, AMD's just a small Intel. AMD's just a small Intel. That's how it is.
Well, Intel with their AVX, they actually added separate AVX stuff onto their chip that's separate. Whereas AMD implements it a lot differently that doesn't require a frequency drop.
Yeah. On the last podcast, that was like a point where I'm reading in the comments where like they were a little bit mad at us for not knowing what AVX is.
Well, that's part of the benefit of having the variety of people we have on the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I actually know what AVX 512 is. So I could have been able to chime in and helped you guys, or who knows what, just like you guys can chime in and help me out when I don't know jack about something,
Yeah.
But
I mean, the point when we were talking about that discussion, it wasn't about servers. It was like mostly about like consumer stuff.
Yeah, you're not going to see a whole lot of 512 in, say, a video game,
Which was what Linus Torvalds got mad at Intel for, focusing so much on AVX just to win in the benchmarks.
Well, yeah, they're not going to do very well pitching that on their i3s or anything like that, because not a lot of people are going to be doing that on their i3s.
Oh, off tangent, but Linus Tech Tips did a video on like Intel's stupid product segmentation.
Oh.
And one of the things that they segment,
what?
It's Optane. They segment Optane, like the SSDs.
Yeah.
Like you can't use the Optane caching thing on like an i3.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can use it on Skylake either, like at all. No matter what Skylake CPU you have, you can't use it.
Well, they used to.
I didn't even know.
Segment based on virtual extensions as well.
Yeah, that's like crazy. It's
one of the reasons why I ended up with a 4-core Kabini based AMD. I think it's a 5250 or 5350, 40, something like that. They had weird numberings back then.
Yeah,
I have that in my virtual server, the one that runs ESXi.
Isn't that AM1?
It's an old Athlon, still a bulldozer chip for Pete's sake. Yeah, that's how old it is.
That's either AM1 or FM2 plus.
Yeah, I think it's an AM1 slot.
Yeah, AM1 was a really weird chipset, like later in life, where they started putting the cheaper stuff on it. That was a really weird time.
Well, it's still going strong. So
I guess.
I mean, it does what I need it to. It runs my firewall and a virtual machine. So,
I was gonna say something I totally forgot. It was something about Intel and segmentation. Oh yeah, it's just it's crazy that their crappy SSDs, they'll even segment that. Like you would think that they need all the help they can get to get these SSDs out there.
Optane isn't crappy, and they're actually somewhat reasonably price pointed given what they are.
The ones I'm talking about are like the 32, 64 gigabyte models that have almost no storage on them, and they're rather slow.
Those are really only like cache drives, those kinds of things. Like the people that would make a mem cache, if you have 64 gig RAM and you have a 32 gig mem cache or something like that,
those actually aren't bad. Linus Tech Tips did a video on whether or not you could use Optane as like a RAM replacement if this is when RAM was super expensive, and they found that it was actually kind of good.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, you look at the new PS5 SSD that's in it. Imagine if that thing was an Optane instead.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
I was gonna say another thing and I forgot. God damn it.
Guess you didn't have your ginseng this morning.
No, I didn't. I was busy replacing fans.
Or is it Ginkgo biloba? That's the memory one. I think it's Ginkgo.
Did we just want to move on to the next topic?
Sure.
Okay.
So
this was funny. Everyone knows about this. The whole Twitter hacking thing.
Well, I was just gonna say I'm not sure if I would consider it a hack per se, because it definitely was social engineered.
Well, that's the thing. How much hacking is just social engineering? I would say almost all of it.
Definitely a lot of access, gaining access to systems, gaining profitable access. That a lot of that is just social engineering, doing your wire transfer fraud for CEOs, even just getting malware onto somebody's computer or phishing somebody. Yeah, it's a lot of social engineering.
I mean, that's how, because when you put all the power in the users to not screw up, well, they're going to go after the user. Well, not the users, but the moderators, the employees, that kind of group.
Well, I mean, IT departments stack thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars into hardware and software that tries to keep these miscreants out. But the weakest link always has been, maybe not always, but you get my drift, always has been end users.
Yeah.
You can put up as many walls as you want, but if somebody somewhere decides to go out of their way to try to do something, they'll do it and compromise your system.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I'd like to read a quote from this.
Sure.
The New York Times reports that a miscreant called Kirk was able to access Twitter's internal Slack workspace, found their details of how to log into the social network's admin panel, and use this access to sell valuable profiles and hijack others.
I'll neither confirm nor deny.
Okay. The jury is still out on who exactly did this, who this Kirk is. A certain miscreant.
He did boast to work at Twitter, and I don't think I would ever want to boast that I work at Twitter. So it's probably not me. Just saying.
Oh, man. But that's funny. When Kirk put that in like the chat where we were like preparing the podcast where we like put all the topics and stuff, and I was like, "Did you edit that?" And he was like, "Oh, that's in there."
Yep. The interesting thing is what Twitter has done regarding this breach. I mean, there were people that were tweeting out pictures of this admin panel.
Oh, yeah.
Showing what it was or what it could do. And Twitter was actively deleting those tweets. Like they would seek out and delete anything that talked about this admin panel.
I can't blame them.
I mean,
should we be mad at them for that?
I think they were trying to control the narrative a little bit.
Yeah, but on the other hand...
Well, they do have policies that say you can't, tweet out hacking information or anything like that, but you're posting a screenshot of a UI. I mean, the cat's out of the bag already. You can control what's on your own platform, sure, but I mean, I think they were trying to save face a little bit, because the idea that they have an admin tool that not only can disable your two-factor auth, well, I understand that. I have an admin tool that disables two-factor auth for our VPN at work. So I can understand that. But being able to send out a tweet in the name of the person you are adminning, that is a very powerful, dangerous, and arguably useless thing. Like, what benefit would an admin at Twitter have to send out a tweet as a particular user?
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, do you remember when one of the Reddit admins, I don't know what exactly their position is, but they got into an argument with someone they didn't like, so they just started editing their comments to say stuff.
Yeah.
Like they were making comments in that person's name, and it was like, and it was like a whole political thing also, but it's like the fact remains is that person was abusing their power to like make people say stuff that they weren't saying. And it's Reddit, real people, like people don't usually like put their real names and shit on Reddit.
Yeah.
But you have to consider like there's like a security aspect to that. There's like an honesty aspect to that. A lot of people clinged more onto like the honesty part of that. Like they were worried like the admins are going to like fake stuff, and they obviously weren't. Mm-hmm. The real issue is the security.
Did the Reddit show that comment had been edited at all?
No.
And
well, it might have said edited so and so hours ago.
Yeah.
I don't think it did, but even if it did, that so what? Like they're making them say stuff that they obviously wouldn't say.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Stuff.
The thing that becomes more of a fear-mongering speculation is, what if Twitter has that ability too? What if they can edit existing tweets without them being flagged as edited, let alone...
that.
Yeah. I mean...
Yeah, that too is an interesting thing.
If they added the ability to send out a tweet as somebody, anyone with this admin panel access, then maybe they have the ability to edit tweets as well, which is something that nobody else has, right? If you don't want something on Twitter that went out on Twitter, you delete the Twitter post and then resend it.
I feel like if they had editing access, they would have used it somehow. That we haven't heard about any like editing shenanigans. I think that indicates that no, they can't.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty dangerous thing, but we also haven't heard of anyone sending out tweets on behalf of somebody else either until now.
But that's writing versus like overwriting and reading.
Yeah.
Like you send it out, for all we know, Twitter systems, like once it's sent out, the only thing you can do with it is delete it.
Yeah. Well, it does exist in a database somewhere, so somebody does have access to edit it.
Yeah, I mean, but maybe they have like a thing where it's like you can't write to this, or you can't write to like the specific files. You can only like...
Yeah, they probably have some security in place, but we would have thought they'd have some security in place for this admin tool as well, but apparently that's not the case.
Well, I think it's a difference between like they have this feature where you can make the tweets, but if they don't have the feature where you can edit it, then it's a lot more technical, right?
Yeah, somebody that admins the database is going to have to do it.
Yeah, and they're going to have to like do it like really like close to the metal, you know?
Yeah, and one would have thought that this kind of ability, like to send out a tweet on behalf of somebody, it would have been a very tight ring of people as well. But apparently enough of their admins have it that several got phished. So low end, I mean, yeah, you can phish just about anyone if you craft it well enough. But to go through the social engineering to get them to get past their two-factor auth or to run something on their system that allows remote access and all that, it takes a little bit more of a general user than an admin. You would think that like network security admins and stuff would be a little less prone to phishing, right?
Yeah. You would also think that their IT department would be like, this isn't a good idea. Like,
yeah, the person who wrote it in the first place is like, why are we even writing this ability? Oh, I just wanted to add the feature.
You probably read Tales from Tech Support, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like a bunch of story. There's one story, and I was reading some recently, where like one of like the sysadmins, like assistants or something, someone like subordinate to the sysadmin, saw that suddenly everyone had admin privileges. Like everyone.
Yeah.
Had like every single kind of privilege you could possibly think of. And when he goes to tell him, he's like, what do you mean everyone? He says, everyone. Like the Gary Oldman thing.
Yeah.
It's like those admins were like, oh yeah, that's a very bad thing. But somehow the Twitter guys, the Silicon Valley guys who like, this is their bread and butter, they're like, oh yeah, that's totally fine. It's totally okay for everyone or a lot of people in the company to have admin access to whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, and I mean, this isn't necessarily an admin level access because it's just a management of a profile access. Yeah. I mean, I can understand having their support team have the ability to turn off two-factor for a particular account and that kind of stuff so that the person could then just bypass the two-factor and get in with their password. And perhaps send out password resets. But they had the ability to change the email in addition to disabling two-factor, which means that any person that can get into this tool can compromise any account and make it their own.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts to become more dangerous, and they have to start thinking about security surrounding this tool. It should have been two-factor auth to begin with to even access this tool and not be able to bypass that two-factor, or at least not be able to get around it for anyone that isn't like the software owner, right?
Yeah. Oh, let's talk about the other like the aftermath. Verified accounts couldn't tweet, basically.
Oh yeah, they disabled.
Jim's very glad that he wasn't disabled, though he doesn't tweet that much anyways.
Yeah, we tweet a lot about the articles that we publish. But as far as just random stuff, we try to avoid being certain verified accounts that just tweet randomly for no good reason with a bunch of BS. But, you know.
So it's funny, the unverified accounts were more safe than the verified ones.
Except for the 8 that had their entire history downloaded.
What do you mean? What? Huh?
There was 8 accounts that a tool that... if you have a Twitter account, you'll probably know that you can go and download your data, right? All your tweets that you've made, your history, and all of that. Just like when you go to Google, you can download your browsing history. You can do that with Twitter as well. You can download all your Twitter history. And 8 accounts had that full detail history downloaded. And they were non-verified accounts, so they were obviously targeted of some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're targeted, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, these mass attacks, it's the random people that don't have anything to worry about, usually.
Well, apparently it was random people that were targeted rather than actual verified accounts. Really? Yeah, and none of the verified accounts... Yeah, Twitter said that none of the verified accounts had that download happen.
So I guess that might be something. Maybe that's totally unrelated.
So it says for up to 8 of the Twitter accounts involved, the attackers took the additional step of downloading the account's information through our Your Twitter Data tool. This is a tool that is meant to provide an account owner with a summary of their Twitter account details and activity. We are reaching out directly to any account owner where we know this to be true. None of the 8 were verified accounts. So maybe this whole thing was just disguising some actual targeted account. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? And then do we have anything else to say on this?
On this? No, I don't think so. Just watch out when you're looking at social media of people, because a lot of times it's not that person that's actually tweeting.
Don't use the internet.
Yeah, a lot of celebrity accounts and stuff that you might be following, they have a team of people that send out tweets for them, and their entire social media presence is managed. Just like with Jim's account, we obviously send out tweets from the website.
Well, yeah, but like the actual written stuff is Jim.
Yeah, everything else is Jim. He's the only one with the password to that, but the website does have privileges to send out.
That he knows of, Kirk.
Oh yeah, right? Because
no, we don't.
We fished him, right? No.
Yeah.
But we can actually type the Twitter message that we want to go out with an article. So if we want to make a custom Twitter message, we have that ability to send on his behalf. So there is...
Hey, our website has good security, right?
Yes. Yes,
okay,
it does.
Good. Okay, moving on. So...
Well, it is protected by Cloudflare too, but we all know how that happens.
Kirk, stop. Don't give him any hints.
Oh, come on. It's not like they could have done anything for those 9 minutes before.
God, move. I did this security breach. Go. Let's go.
Security breach?
Yeah, you're going to make one. Just shut your pie hole.
Shut our pie hole. Well, we don't store any of our leaked information on the website, so have at it.
Oh, yeah. All right. So, if you want to read some of my failed articles, go right ahead.
Yeah. Or have a personal copy.
So we have an upcoming review for a mini ITX case that was sent to me from Salvo Studios. It's the S402, and I like it. Just says like this is going to be a preview of the review, I guess. I like it. That's mostly because it was sent to me for free, but also because it's really small. It's could house like a giant GPU, and it cuts down on all the stuff you don't really need for a gaming rig, like drives, power supply. I mean, there's a power supply in there, but it's a small one. CPU, you don't really need one of those for gaming unless you need a super high refresh rate.
What GPU is in the picture? That's a thick 2070 or something?
No,
maybe
is 28? That...
It's a thick.
Oh, no, it is. I think there's another one with the Sapphire in there. But this is like, yeah, it's an FX.
Oh, yeah. That little itty-bitty power cool. Oh, there's a power color in there?
Oh, are you talking about mine?
No, I'm looking at these pictures that they have on their site. They have a stack of Western Digital Scorpio Blacks. Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, but anyway, this is a really nice case. You get 3 slots for a GPU, and how long? It's like 320 millimeters long GPU, I believe.
Wow, they got a 72 gig 10K SAS drive in one of their pictures.
Yeah,
HP branded.
But there's a lot of configuration in this case. This is mostly a GPU focused case, so it has like the room for the big GPU and then not much for like CPU, like specifically for the cooling. But you could theoretically throw in a 240 millimeter rad or a 120 millimeter if you have a short enough GPU.
Yeah.
Like if you have like one of like Power Colors, like really short GPUs, then you could throw in a small radiator in there for better CPU cooling.
Yeah.
So for my PC, that was an option because I have the mammoth-sized Vega 56 Red Devil. That's like 2.5 slot. It's almost too long to fit in the case, but just barely does, which is great. I didn't want to have to use my 1080 Ti because I like to have that on the test system. I'm sorry, the test bench. And it's really nice. One thing I will say is that the fans that came with the fans that came with this didn't have PWM control, and that's because even though they have 4 pins, for some reason, that's a lie. There's only like 2 connections. So
how many fans came with this?
3. So it's 3 70mm ones. They're gonna replace those with ones that you can actually control. That's nice.
The little 40mm side case fan here has 4 wires running to the 4-pin connector. Are you saying in yours it only has 2?
2 of those wires don't do anything.
Really?
Yeah, they're just dead connection.
Wow.
Like he actually like popped the fan open, and lo and behold, only 2 points there.
Are these little low profile 120mm included?
Yeah. So they were free, but like you can put in like you have enough clearance to put in like the 60mm Noctuas.
And these are 3-pin connectors, it looks like.
Oh yeah, and there's some other fans. Those don't come with the case. I don't know.
The 2 low profile ones that look like the scythe ones.
Yeah, I think that's just a demonstration where like you could put that on the side. Oh. He also sent me a bunch of stuff with this case. Like a bunch of stuff he didn't have to, but for some reason he did anyways. He sent me well, he asked if I wanted the filter, and I said yes because my room is like incredibly dusty.
Yeah.
So that for me,
this thing looks like it has a lot of open airflow to it.
Yes, for mini ITX, that's kind of a requirement. So I do recommend you, if you want this, get the filter. It's sized specifically for this.
How's the fit and finish of it? This one looks like it's been like fingerprinted all over the place.
The silver one is the prototype. Okay. If you can see like the very first few images, it's the black galvanized finish. It's a nice finish. I like how it's like simple and stuff.
Does it have fingerprints or anything on that galvanized finish?
No fingerprints.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
A lot of these pictures you can tell are a little bit raw because like this one here is just the raw metal.
Yeah,
you can see fingerprints all over it. I mean, I was looking at one of these pictures and I'm just scratching my head. It has an OCZ Vertex 3.
Wait.
Oh, yeah.
Where's that?
It's the one that shows the hard drive capability for it with the stack of the Scorpio Blacks, and then they have that HP drive mounted in there.
That's really old then.
They have an OCZ Vertex 3. So they must have been scraping through their junk drawer or something to fill all of these slots.
Hardware. Anyways, so he sent me a lot of stuff. He sent me the case, he sent me the filter. He sent me a Noctua 120mm fan. What he had intended me to do with that was use it on one of the coolers he sent me. He sent me 2 CPU coolers, by the way. I didn't ask for them. He just sent them to me because, like, you deserve it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that cooler doesn't fit in my case anyways. I'm gonna put it on the side panel, which you can do. You can put it on either side, I guess. But for me, the only side that makes sense is the side that where it could be like an intake for like the motherboard area. I can't fit it over the GPU, and even if I could, it wouldn't matter because the GPU has 3 fans for intake. And then he sent me 2 coolers that they would have fit. They can fit inside the case, but they're not compatible with my RAM, which is really sad.
Yeah, you pretty much have to have some low profile Corsair or something.
And neither of my other 2 Noctua low profile coolers fit. So I had to use my L9A, which is not the best CPU cooler, but it has the best compatibility. It's basically compatible with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, as I am recording this, I am at a chilly 70 degrees on my 3600 stock.
Celsius?
Yes. Of course, Celsius. I know we're American, but
Fahrenheit.
And it peaks to like 77 while recording. But it'll also get to like 89 instead of Venture 20. So that's a little hot, but oh well. It gets a good score.
Yeah, but don't worry. 95 is kind of the cutoff, right? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But anyways, this is a really nice case. It's kind of pricey at $200, but there's not really anything else on the market that does this. So if you need a case that has the GPU horsepower because you play lots of games, then this is the one. Also, good luck buying an ITX board. There's not really a whole lot of those anymore. He sold me a mini ITX board. That's how I got mine.
Well, one thing that I managed to help a friend with was one of his ITX builds. And we actually built it in a little bit bigger case than this. It was a Ryzen Tech. Let me pull it up here. The Ophion.
Wait, does Ryzen Tech make CPU coolers?
And no, they make cases. In this
case, they make cases too? I thought they only made GPU coolers.
I think we ended up with the Evo, but it can take a full GPU as well. Yeah, they got a picture here with some 2070, 2080 in it, from Asus.
Yeah, this case, I mean, it's good for mini ITX, but I mean, there is still quite a bit of like open space and like this kind of shape. I mean, I'm sure not everyone wants this kind of shape in their case. I mean, it's decently well optimized.
Well, it's basically the same shape as the other, just twice as wide because they lay things sideways.
This is more like the S402 is more like a PS4 Pro. Yeah, this one's more like the Xbox Series X. Except, of course, it's like laid on its side.
The Xbox Series X is more squarish.
Yeah, I know, but like that's the closest comparison I can get. Though NZXT does have like a Xbox Series X case now. Like it's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of looking at that one until Salvo Studios sent me this one, but but it comes with the AIO, so you have to buy the AIO too, and so it's like $300.
Yeah,
very expensive.
And we actually use a Antec case at work that's a similar form factor to the case that you're looking at, the Salvo Studios.
Yeah.
It's just a very tall, narrow case, takes an MATX board, but it doesn't have any GPU capability besides just a low profile, because it's all just using the vertical low profile brackets. So we could put low profile NICs in it, things like that. But when it comes to GPUs, we're stuck with like a 730 and stuff. It's terrible.
Like basically, Salvo Studios has cornered the market on this very specific niche. So
a big GPU and a media center PC that fits where your PS4 would.
Yeah, well, PS4 Pro.
Yeah,
because it is quite. If you're setting it horizontally, it's quite tall. It's more like PS4 Pro original Xbox One sized.
Did they keep that handle on top?
Yeah, I like the handle.
Yeah, I can see that being very useful in a get up and go kind of situation.
It's decently portable for a full size gaming PC.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for full size while being mini ITX.
And of course, with their layout that they have for all these hard drives and such, it looks like it's more than just a gaming PC. You can use it for a portable workstation.
It's really focused on gaming, but you can customize it.
Yeah.
If you're like, I'm kind of a gamer, but I also need lots of storage space, or maybe I want a faster CPU, then you can go and do that. So overall, I like this case. The price is very high for it, I think. But on the other hand, nothing else does this. And $200 for a case isn't really that expensive. There's a lot of cases that are even more expensive than this.
Yeah.
$200 is like, I'd say that's pretty decent, especially for a market that gets almost no love from the big manufacturers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Ryzen Tech isn't one of the big case manufacturers that everyone knows by name, you know?
Yeah. The only like big name manufacturers that make mini ITX cases, like Silverstone, almost all of those are not gaming oriented.
Yeah.
And the ones that are quite large.
Yeah, and the one that I have, I got one that's just like this one here, but it's a media PC centric case, and so it takes a low profile video card.
I've used one of those, and it was fine with the mini ITX thing, but it's like the low profile thing is like the killer for like if you want like mini ITX gaming, which is why the Salvo Studios.
Yeah, why don't they make a Vega 64 low profile? Make it triple slot. I don't care. Just make it low profile.
There's also not enough low profile GPUs. They only go up to like 1050. I don't think they've even updated them for 16 series.
Yeah, anything that takes an extra plug, I don't think there's low profile for.
Yeah, which is really sad. Also, like, even if it's not about power, it's about heat.
Yeah, well, that's why I was saying, make it a 3-slot card for all it matters.
Okay, so, and we have questions now, I think. Let's go and see some questions.
Yeah.
Which we did not have last time, but now we do. We found questions. From SMCKBK. Impact on the semiconductor industry over the latest Apple moves of ditching Intel for CPU and AMD for GPU. Where can Apple go from here?
Did they ditch AMD for GPU? As far as I'm aware, even Navi is going to be having a slew of Apple-specific GPUs.
They might ditch them eventually, but right now, for like at least for the high-end discrete stuff, no, AMD is still in there.
Yeah, the best they could do is ditch them for their own like internal GPU that they use on their iPads and stuff, but I don't really see that happening for large production. But
this is like the semiconductor industry. I think ARM's going to get a lot more use. ARM could get more use in like the more specialized stuff. Like we could see instead of
more than now. I mean, ARM is pretty widely used already.
Like instead of like all laptops being like Intel or AMD, we could see more laptops that are ARM that might not even use Windows. They might use Windows, they might not.
Oh, instead of Windows the laptop, RT was great, right?
Well, we'll give them some time. Come on, Kirk.
Yeah.
But we might not see, instead of laptops being synonymous with PC and Intel and AMD and Microsoft, we might see more like it might
Linux
be a lot more different. It might be more like what phones are like now. Like there's like a lot of different choices.
What you mean, Chromebooks?
Sort of. Well, it could be a lot more than Chromebooks. It could be some high end ARM ones. I mean, it just depends if it's profitable, of course.
Yeah, and it really depends on what you do as well. I mean, a lot of the things that phones are doing that PCs used to do better kind of stuff is video editing, where everything flows through that H.264 encoder on the GPU. I mean, there's a lot of things that are being touted as being capable on phone CPUs or the A12 CPU, that kind of stuff. But a lot of them are because the hardware has specific encoders and decoders to be able to do those things. And you'll notice that a lot are video editing and things like that. But when you try to go outside of that box and force that phone to encode X265, all of a sudden, all of that use case goes out the window and the thing's garbage.
Yeah.
So when you're doing things inside the box, Apple's little box, it works great because that's what they enabled it to do. But as soon as you need to go outside of that box, it starts to break down pretty quickly. Like you try editing 8K video on your iPad, you're not going to do it.
I'm just thinking, imagine a world where like Dell makes their own laptop straight up. Like they have their own CPU and stuff.
Licensed directly from ARM and all
Maybe
of that.
even some custom software that's based on Linux. Like imagine that kind of world. That'd be very different.
Yeah, and I think Dell and HP are the only ones that are really big enough to get the volume needed to make it more worthwhile than just buying a Snapdragon or something.
Well, think about GPD. They're a startup, and they got into like the little tiny laptop and other device scene pretty quickly.
But they're not using their own CPU, are they?
Yeah, that's true. But it could be something. They could do something like there's a company that makes just low-end SKUs of CPUs and stuff. There could be just a lot more companies making CPUs, or like at least designing them.
I don't know. There's a lot of IP that goes into designing CPUs, and yet you start to tread water pretty quick in the world of patents.
Yeah. So there has to be a degree of specialization and also a degree of generalization.
Yeah, and that's kind of why ARM was a pretty good option for Apple for their A-series processors, is they could take off-the-shelf Snapdragon or something like that. They could just take the ARM core and modify it within reason, of course, and make a CPU that does kind of what they need to do a little bit better, and sell that as a new CPU for their equipment. They didn't have to build the processor from scratch. They're protected by the patents that ARM holds, and they have something that's just a little custom. So I mean, it's a pretty good world all around.
All right, do we want to move on to the next question?
Yeah.
This one, you're probably better for answering, or at least saying this one.
Go ahead and read it.
Wait, do you not have them pulled up?
No.
Okay, that's why. I see.
My screen is dedicated for the podcast. I can't really move around too much in Discord and whatnot.
All right. From Harshal, when are we getting that home office chair ergonomics review roundup? I think that was something you said you were going to do. And
yeah,
also,
I got all the pictures taken for it and got some of that basic stuff. I just need to get the article written. But as you guys know, I was not available for a good chunk of this middle between weeks.
Yeah.
There's another half.
Yeah. What does everyone think of the everything as a service model that we seem to be heading towards? I don't like it. That's in the question.
I don't like it. Just think of it this way. Who wants to pay $5 a month for their OS? Anyone?
Yeah, I don't like that.
Same feeling goes for pretty much everything. You can do it as a service all you want, but you're almost guaranteed to be paying more money by the end of its useful lifespan than you would have if you had just bought whatever it was. Like, can you imagine renting your hard drives?
Oh, oof.
What if you paid $1 a month for a 6 terabyte hard drive?
Actually, that doesn't sound that bad.
It doesn't sound that bad. But how many months does that take to break even? 100 months, maybe?
Well, that's like 8 years. That's like 8-9 years.
Which is why it wouldn't be $1. It'd be like $4.
Yeah, okay. So then that would be like 2 years, and that's like, not that great.
Yeah, why didn't you just buy well, in case if the hard drive crashed and you had to send it back, it's like leasing a vehicle. It's
though
like,
on the other hand, if we're not talking about hard drives, because those aren't getting faster, if we were talking about like SSDs, which are going to get faster, then that could be a little bit of a different story. Like you spend like a little bit of money over 2 years, and then you can like move on to the next best thing.
Yeah, you just reinstall your OS and all of that, right?
No, I think like overall, it's not that great of a model, and I don't like it that much.
Yeah, and it's more for software and such, but in the enterprise, we actually have as a service models in hardware. Like you look at some of the fiber channel switches, you buy a Barracuda, it has 24 ports on it, but you pay for every port that gets enabled. And so if you want to use 12 of those 24 ports, well, you pay the cost of 12 of those ports. And then at any time in the future, you decide you want to hook up another server or 3 to that fiber channel switch, you can buy those extra 3 or 12 or whatever ports that you need to enable for that server. And
sounds great.
Yeah, and you can open it up as you go. Did we talk about that? Oh, I don't think we did. They were talking about having cars run the same kind of model.
I was about to say that with Tesla, with like the seat warmers, where you have to pay for them. Like it's in your car, but you have to pay for them like at some point. Like I don't know if it's like a lump sum or if it's like a monthly thing, but you have to pay for them.
There's other manufacturers that are kind of looking at that idea where they just get one seat. It has the AC, the heat warmer, all of that. And if you want to use it, you just pay this little bit extra whenever you want. So when you get into the resale market and somebody has that car for 3 years and then sells it, then that next person can go, hey, this person never bought the seat warmer. So let me pay $400 or whatever to turn on that feature, and now boom, I got a seat warmer. Or worse yet, rent said feature, turn it on for a month, and first 3 months are free, right?
So I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages both ways. Overall, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, and I just really don't like the idea of a subscription service for a lot of things. I mean, yeah, your phone service, your ISP, things like that are subscription based, and for good reason, because you're continually using somebody else's services, which is why cloud is so popular. Is it's a subscription service where you're continually using somebody else's resources. But cloud is just somebody else's server. If you wanted to host something in-house because you have the expertise to in, say, an enterprise business, it sometimes makes more monetary sense to host something in-house if you're big enough. If you're a little mom and pop shop that there's 3 employees and none of which are IT, as a service stuff starts to make more sense because they don't have the expertise to manage it in-house. But if they did run it in-house, let's say they're Quicken or some kind of QuickBooks platform, they could run that in-house for years, minor updates, and pay less overall than if they cloud hosted it.
All right, so our last question. Is USB Type-C likely to be the one cable to rule them all? Peripherals, external storage, video, power, audio, networking. Does it make sense that USB Type-C just take over as the only connector for every purpose?
Well, let's look at micro USB, for instance.
Ew,
I have a drone on my desk right now that takes micro USB. There's all sorts of things that adopted micro USB as their platform. A lot of cell phones, for instance. And now that USB Type-C is out, where it's unidirectional, omnidirectional, whatever, you can reverse it and it's fine.
Bidirectional?
No, I'm talking more of the reversing of the connector and it still works.
Yeah, isn't that bidirectional? 2-direction?
No.
Okay. Whatever you say, Kirk.
But like my kids, they plug in their little cell phones and it uses micro USB, and so they try to jam it in wrong half the time, and so
it's the worst.
Yeah, it eventually breaks and stops, and you have to start using the wireless charging, unless if you're using an iPhone, which but ours has the wireless charging because they're actually Androids. So
yeah, I like this idea, but the problem is that this depends a lot on having really good cables.
Yeah, and the USB Type-C has a thicker ring on the actual plug portion. So it has a lot stronger insertion capability. It can withstand a little bit.
Well, what I meant is that you can't really have this work if there's a lot of quality variation between different cables.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes really confusing. It's like, okay, does this USB Type-C support this? Does this USB Type-C cable support this? I mean, it technically does, but I don't want to burn my house down.
Yeah, and you're going to be looking at USB Type-C that supports USB 3 Gen 2 or something like that, but some cables might not do any better than just charge something. And then you got to worry about, is this a charging cable or not a charging cable? And how good of quality is those lines in the first place to enable a 6-foot versus a 3-foot?
So this idea is great, but it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the cables getting it right. It also depends on how much capabilities these cables have, because, like, for example, USB Type-C charging, it only goes up to like 65 watts or something, or maybe like 90. I don't know. It definitely doesn't go up to the 180 that my laptop needs.
There's actually some Type-C cables for devices that actually do support high rate charging.
Yeah, but those are pretty niche. Those are going to be pretty niche.
You're going to find them connected firmly to the power bricks that run them.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have some at work. The laptops are charged with USB Type-C. You can plug in anything into that USB Type-C to charge it, yes, but it'll be a trickle charge in some cases if it's not powerful enough. And you have to use their brick to actually get the full experience for the charging.
So I think we'll see something sort of like this, where USB Type-C becomes a lot more common than like micro ever was.
Yeah, and you'll start to see it take over for some video display as well.
Yeah.
Like I've seen some video display over Type-C.
By necessity, like special connectors will still have to exist.
Yeah, display port's still going to be a thing. You're still going to have HDMI. I mean,
still going to have like the big power plug.
Can you imagine how confused consumers, like your mom and dad kind of consumers, that they get a new device from the store and it has 16 USB Type-Cs coming out the back and any of which can be used for anything? This USB Type-C goes to your TV, but this one goes to the wall for power, and then this one goes to, can you imagine them getting that wrong?
Yeah.
there's a reason why some of these...
It depends on a lot.
Yeah, and these cables are keyed in the first place because if they marked a plus side and a negative side, nobody would know what they're doing anyway.
So, yeah, it'll get adopted, but you can't, it can't be used for everything. That's the problem. Yeah. You know, like the Incredibles, if everything's a USB Type-C cable, nothing is. That's what he said.
I can see it having some broad-reaching effects, just like micro USB has. So anything that's mini or micro USB or just even normal USB, you'll likely see Type-C take those over in pretty quick work. I mean, you saw how long it took for USB charging to become a thing for a lot of stuff. And it'll probably take a little bit for Type-C to become more ubiquitous. But it's getting there. It's only been out for a few years now, right?
Yeah, like 3-ish, 2 or 3, somewhere in there.
I was thinking closer to 4.
Maybe 4. It might be 4.
But yeah, it takes time for these things. And by the time it's more ubiquitous, they'll probably have something different.
And that's our final question. What's the final question we'll answer? Someone has a little of a cheeky question in there.
Oh, come on. What's the cheeky question? I don't think I read that one. It must have been later.
This one's from Carbon Cry. What is AVX Kappa? It's very clever.
I think we already answered.
Yeah. Someone didn't like that we didn't know what AVX was in the last one. Sorry, that I didn't know, and that Donnie and Alex and Keith didn't know.
Well, I guess this comes back to the podcast itself. I don't know if anyone's been actually watching the podcast versus just listening to it while playing a video game or something.
He was definitely listening.
Yeah, because I put in post an actual definition of AVX and what it's useful for, an actual bullet list of some of the stuff it's useful for, so that people who are watching the podcast will know that, yes, somebody knows what AVX is, and I personally do consider it somewhat worthwhile. Obviously, it's not as broad supported as AVX 256, for instance, but still 512 does have some uses, and once it becomes more ubiquitous, will start becoming more useful.
But hang on, that means you were making fun of us.
Apparently, you didn't see the mic drop in there either then.
Oh, okay. This podcast is canceled.
If anyone wants to go find the mic drop picture in the previous podcast, I put a mic drop picture in it. So
I was skimming through that too, and I saw that, and I was like, oh, I wonder what that's for. And I didn't think of anything. I didn't think it was anything.
You should have just listened to the audio.
I was there. I just didn't have time to look at it in post.
Oh, so yeah, I like to put some post-edit stuff in there. Most of it's out of fun, just having some fun with reactionary or just things that I think of while going through it in post, to just kind of give a lighter feel to it, give it a little bit of visual joke.
And have meetings.
So it's definitely worth watching as well as listening. So
I'm gonna have to send an email to Jim about this, Kirk.
And these things only blip on the screen for like a second or two, depending, because they're meant to be a quick reactionary thing. They're not meant to be drawn out for 5 minutes on the screen. So keep an eye out for those little Easter eggs, I guess you can call them, or little visual cues. And I hope everyone listened to the last podcast all the way to the end. There was some fun stuff right at the end, right after the closing videos. So I like to...
You're gonna spoil it.
I know, right? I like to hide some stuff that way too. And I guess I can admit right now as well that I screwed up in post. I left 3 audio clips that didn't make it into the lasso when I was editing for time and whatnot. So there was some overspeak. That was my mistake. It wasn't anything in the actual verbiage.
Wait, I just want to say that I said that would be the worst podcast we've done, and it wasn't our fault. It was only your fault.
Yes. I did shorten it by about 10, 15 minutes though.
It's a good job, though, but you ruined it. You made it the worst. Congratulations.
Yeah. Yep. Poor editing on my part. Had some low audio on Alex, so I probably should have boosted his audio a little bit in the final mix. There's a lot that goes into these things.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
You got to stop talking.
All right. Well, that's it for today's podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We will hopefully be back next week with a nice new set of topics, depending on how the week goes. So stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
right, that went decently.